Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Yo DNB Raps. I'm your host, Lee UHF, as always. But we are bringing a first today. We have our very first South American drum and bass artist joining us on the show today. He is actually one of the most streamed, most downloaded artists in drum and bass. Doesn't get as much press and coverage in the UK, except he is flying around all over the world touring. He's just brought out an enormous album called Superstars. It's doing the rounds with everybody. Some huge support. You probably know him better by the visuals you're about to see. This is Zardonic. How you doing, buddy?
How are you guys doing? Thank you so much for joining in.
All right, can I take this off now?
Yeah, take off the mask. Take off the mask. Thank you for that.
I hope the man behind the mask is not so disappointing to the audience.
But that's it. Most people are literally only going to ever see that mask and that jacket, aren't they? So
yeah,
give them the proper introduction. Show that we've got the authentic Zardonic in the house.
Yeah.
And hopefully introduce you to a new generation of drum and bass in the UK as well. That's what we're aiming to do today.
For sure, man. Well, again, anyone who's interested, I appreciate it for sure. Like it's been a long run. Tough sometimes, easier some of the times. You know, it's a never-ending roller coaster if you want to pursue a music career in any genre. But I think especially with drum and bass, given that it has such a low ceiling, you know, like it's still a very underground genre. So, you know, if anything, I'm glad that there's people out there that are, you know, happy with the music that I do if it gives them something positive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the numbers don't lie as well. And we're going to get into a lot of the music stuff today. I wanted to kind of start at the beginning because this is the first time we've had a proper face-to-face. We've been chatting online for quite a little while as well. So it's nice to finally see you in person, and studio's looking very nice back there. Lots of hardware and equipment. And the guitar, there's the Zardonic sound is there in the background, as we say.
Yeah. I mean, man, I wish I could. That's my next goal at some point when the tour's over. Because the studio's a mess right now. It's it still looks so right on camera, I guess. Like it's, but that doesn't really matter when you're doing music. Like sound doesn't care how it looks like. It applies to everything. Doesn't matter if you're doing with something digital or with a hardware synth. So, you know, I got this amazing toys that allow me to get like a plethora of, you know, a lot of variety in my sonic palette, so to say. But as of right now, there are so many things in between. Like there's documents and stuff I got to sort out. And this guitar I got right here is like in front of one of the synths. It's a pain to actually use any of this right now because there's a lot of cluttering happening in between. So that's my next goal. Like when the tour's over, maybe do it a little bit of a makeover. Nothing too over the top. Just, you know, just put a bit more of order in it so I can start using them more for the next record.
Yeah, how many producers say that though? I'm going to tidy my studio. I'm going to tidy my studio. It'll get done. And you put it back and back and back. So I don't think you're alone there, buddy. I think we all suffer with that quite a bit, don't we? So, and I can see some classic stuff back there as well with the instruments back there and the keyboards. You got some real classic sounds there, haven't you? You've been collecting all that stuff for a while then? Is some of it quite old?
It's, well, I mean, so some of them are... You know, there's a Virus TI too, the Polar Edition, but funny enough, I actually got it. It was sort of recently-ish. I think it was somewhere in the middle of a pandemic, because like back then, you know, when I started working with music, all I had was an M Audio controller, like a really the cheaper line. You know, the one that has, I don't know, 61 keys, and that's all. And I had that on a computer. That's all I was doing music with. Like back then when I was doing, I know that you know the more classic Zardonic tracks that some of the newer fans haven't had access to. But, you know, in times of Policia, you know, the first tracks that I released that made some sort of an impact in 2008, all I had was a MIDI controller and a computer. And that was it.
Yeah.
Then I slowly started getting into I had no idea how to really handle synthesis back then. It was just me fiddling with knobs until something made some sense to me, and then I slowly started learning, proper synthesis. I started basically, now I know what I'm doing whenever I'm fiddling with any of those knobs. Now I design with intention, and one of the things that helped me learn that was working with hardware synths. I mean, don't ask me why. It just didn't dawn on me when I was using digital synths. I just did not understand the interface. Like, what is this oscillator LFO? I was completely confused, and I'm a bit stubborn. I don't like theory. I just can't. When someone's like trying to explain something to me, it just becomes way more confusing. So the best way for me to discover that was maybe get a hardware synth and then discover on my own. Don't ask me why, because the interface is similar to a VST, but that was the way it dawned on me. As I'm moving the knobs, like as I'm touching them, that's when I had those eureka moments of, oh, okay, this is what an envelope does. This is what an LFO is doing. Okay. And then I just went back and I started making all these sounds that I was so happy with. And eventually that turned into me actually working on factory presets for Arturia, for G4 software, which is something that I never really saw myself doing. I was just, I never thought of myself to be capable of doing any of that. And then people started to actually like ask me, hey, we like that sound. Like, would you like to do some presets for us? And then it started getting more and more and more, and now I'm it's a never-ending rabbit hole. That's why you now see all these synths, because it's like now I want to I feel like now I know what to do with the synths, and it gets me where I want to go.
Yeah, it's like the practical, isn't it? I'm very much the same. If somebody gives me a piece of paper, written down instructions, I've got no chance in following it. But when I get into the practical and use my hands and get stuck in there, it all becomes a little bit more apparent, and I probably learn a lot quicker as well. So I fully get where you're going with that. I can see a few other things on your other shoulder as well. Some of these keyboards. What do you have on the other side?
On this side or on the other side?
Yeah, no, you're right. The first one.
So over here, I've got a GRP synthesizer A2 by the Italian company GRP Synthesizer. I went to I forgot the name of the music convention, but it was a something like a smaller NAMM, so to say, happening in Rome. And they had a lot of really cool things, and I saw this and was like, whoa, this sounds great. Like, what is this? And then apparently it's a bit of a boutique company, and they've got, I don't know, clients like Jean-Michel Jarre or whatever. Like he's got like a bunch of them, and I was like, hey, this is cool. And the price seemed okay for what it was. Like it didn't seem too overpriced. It was still a bit steep, but I saved a little and I got that one. No discounts, no favors, no I'm Zardonic, and I'll do a post and get some likes for that. Sometimes people are nice enough to do that, and but I try to make sure that whenever I'm collaborating with a brand, it's completely free of I try to keep it as free of bias as possible. Basically, if I play a synth and I don't like it, I don't even entertain the conversation. No. It has to be authentic first. The next one is an Arturia Mini Brute, but I had someone modify it for me, so we got rid of the keyboard, and he built like a small casing around it. Looks really nice. The next one is a bit of a rarity these days, especially because of what's going on right now with the whole Russia and Ukraine situation. That's a Polyvox. It's a desktop edition. The new one, they did like 100 units of them only. I think you can still buy one that I found on a German store. I would recommend anyone to buy that. Like none of these people are associated with any Russian government companies or any funds. They're not, they're not on the. It's a safe buy right there.
Non-political hardware.
it's non-political hardware. There you go. And I mean, I've always been a huge fan of the sound of the Polyvox. I really like the the rawness of it, the sort of wrong character that it had, because that's what it was. It was a filter that wasn't working properly, because what the idea of a filter that was working properly was a filter with something such as the ladder filter character, like the Moog. It was very clean, and then other types of filters came out slowly, but the Polybox filter basically is a complete, it's a complete mess. If you put all the resonance all the way up, it just goes into it doesn't even self-oscillate. It's not clean. It's not a clean sound at all. It just goes into it basically creates all this sort of feedback type of sound, and it's unstoppable. It's like it's alive, and that's actually the beauty of it. So I've always been a fan of the original, and when I found that, I got one for myself. Then back then, and I think this was in 2017 or 2018. I think it was 2017 when I already had it. And then there's a classic, Novation Ultranova. A lot of people hate on this thing because they say the Supernova sounded better. The Ultranova is the next step. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was like Novation screwed up the marketing, or this is a great synth. It sounds amazing, and it's so underpriced. Like, you can get them for what, like a couple hundred these days. People just treated them like they were toys, and it's a great synth. It's a great performance synth. I love it. I would definitely recommend it to anybody out there, especially if they want to start with synthesis and they want to get something cheaper. A couple £100 and you'll get one of those, and it's a great synth. I think it's a really great synth. And then there's the Moog Subsequent 37, the Sub 37, which, I always felt like I needed to have at least one Moog in the studio, because I love the sound. I love that character. It's a beautiful character, and this is my favorite of them because it's the most it's the heavier sounding of them, I would say.
Yeah.
Next to maybe the Moog 1, which is an absolute beauty and a monster, but to me that's overkill, and it's a nice to have, but it's not $8,000 nice to have. I'm not saying it's not worth what it is, because I know that there's a lot of effort behind the synth like that, but to me it's like, okay, no, this is where I'm just trying to save money for down payment so I can get my own house, so I can get out of this rent hell that most people in Europe have to live with, and then maybe I'll think about getting something like that. But
I've never owned a Moog, unfortunately, but that one is that's one of the most recognizable ones. When you see that kind of wooden top and things like that, you know exactly what it is, don't you, from a mile off? Always recognizable. What would you say your music is from hardware to software ratio wise at the minute? When you're making your tracks, how much of it would you say is hardware as opposed to software?
That depends on the time and the schedule, because that's the thing. When you're working with hardware, it requires a bit of extra love, a bit of extra time. You have to sit down, design. At least in my case, I'm most of the time I don't. So
you've been a bit more inventive when you're using the hardware. You're taking a bit more time with it to invent sounds more and.
Exactly, and I don't like most factory presets in most hardware synthesizers. I think that the only way I know the capabilities of a synthesizer is if I get my hands on it. So I'm always pushing it to the limits, and then I go down from there. I've seen that too many factory presets in a lot of hardware synths are very like bread and buttery kind of sounds, and I'm like, I don't need any more of that. So I'm trying to be like, how can this specific modulator take this into a place that it hasn't been before, so to say, and that takes some time. So I've made some of them have preset recall, some of them don't. So I try to use I try to design presets as much as I can, and if there's no preset recall, then that means that you got to sit down and you do something and you record it, and that's it.
Yeah,
it's gone. That's the beauty of it. So it does require a bit more time. So what I do is I try to create some sort of let's say some sort of sample packs, something that I can then take into the DAW Like I'll take a day or two just fiddling with sound. Sometimes it's just experimental. Sometimes it's intentional. Like I'm gonna make some bass here, and this preset's good, and this would make a great pad. This is a noise that I like. I'm getting some loops from here, and then I create those packs, and I take those sounds then into whatever projects I'm working on, if they work, and if they don't, then I'm using for something else later. That's also that's something that I started to do as well in the early 2010s, because I realized I wanted to have more of my own personal sound, even if it meant not knowing too much or fiddling around. But it just took me more time, of course, because I didn't know what I know now about synthesis. But I wanted to find sounds that would just make sense to my ears and to my style. So I had already done I had already a similar approach when I was working with VSTs, but now that I have more intention when my hand reaches the knob, it's a bit faster. But then I found out that it's so much faster to work with VSTs and so much more convenient, because you don't have one synth, you can have a copy of it and just many copies of it as your computer can handle. So it's definitely a benefit. So that's why I'm not very, whenever I have to like pick a team, I'm out. A team red and team blue, and let's all kill each other because I like analog synths and you like digital synths. That's retarded. I hate it. It's a part of the human experience that I absolutely abhor.
Oh yeah, you give somebody an internet connection, they're going to show their opinion, aren't they? That's always going to be the case. So you're going to find plenty of those arguments on there.
Yeah, but I think it's completely fine to have an opinion. I'm just saying, manners, man. It's that simple. Just having a little bit of and I'm not saying I'm probably also not like the best mannered guy out there, but I think there are ways you could also have great manners and be a total dick. You could still be a gentleman about the way you insult somebody. Yeah. But
all of these discussions are always going to be a lot different in person as well, aren't they? Like I said, you give somebody an internet connection and it's completely different. That barrier where you're talking to your screen, manners goes out the window. Yeah. And obviously you're always going to have your rants and things like that. But you put somebody in person, it's a completely different kettle of fish, as they say.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm guilty of the same, especially when I was on whatever online forums. I'm pretty sure I've said a bunch of shit that I shouldn't have said. Yeah. Just because I wanted to get a reaction from people, or just because I wanted to troll people, or just because I wanted to piss people off. And then you look back and you're like, man, that was so unnecessary. So I try to look at, whenever I see hating comments or whatever, I try to look at that with the same importance that I would look at my own comments whenever back in the day, because it really is just, it's like brain farts. People will just put this out there and, well, I don't need to keep it, so I delete whatever I can that is not positive from my socials. I'll respect an opinion that is said to me in a humane manner, so to say, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. But most of the time, if I ever catch someone just being a total dick about their opinion, then it's just delete, ban, out. I don't care. It's my page.
Yeah, I can say I've been privy to that as well. I mean, if I go on some of the old forums that I used to go on, like Dogs on Acid and happyhardcore.com, just things like that, and I go back to really old posts on there, you're like, oh my God, did I actually write that? But I think like you're saying, being very aware of what you say now, that probably comes with obviously you being more popular nowadays, and the scrutiny is on you, so you see what other people are doing, and you probably get a little bit more wise to that and how you should react from now on, because you see the bad way you're doing it, don't you?
Yeah, but at the same time, it also I think we're not free in that regard.
No,
I think that we are going too much to the other extreme. We can't go from being completely unhinged and then say all sorts of mean things to the other way. As an episode, I forgot the name of it, but it's a very key episode that I watched when you probably watched series? Black Mirror.
Yes.
I forgot what was the episode where basically all of society is meshed, so to say, like regulated by the amount of social score that you have.
You get a social score. I think they got this running in actually China at the minute as well. There's kind of like a social
no. Make no mistake. This is running in the entire planet. As long as the thing is, maybe in China it's a bit more obvious. But like right now, we are doing it to each other. You know, people are judged based on how many likes they've got, how many streams they've got, how many, like, you know, because we've always sort of judged that way as well. Maybe we just didn't have before. Maybe it was like CD sales or like, or I don't know, some king hired this guy to do this great piece of art, and because of that, then they are famous. Whatever. There was always some prestige linked to that. But
there is an official thing though in China. Sorry, I just actually looked it up as well. It's the social credit system. How they work it. Yeah. So they've actually, I mean, a lot of these Black Mirror episodes, I think there's a couple that have really just come to life. It's almost like a prediction of the future, which is what it's set out to be. But yeah, I mean, like you say, we do that to each other. But in China, there is like an official social credit system based on certain things, and if you fall lower, you can't get loans and things like that. And yeah, absolutely crazy.
That's mental, man. I mean, if you think about it, the last part, that moment when this woman finally falls in jail because her social score went to hell, and then in front of her there's another guy, and then they just start insulting each other and telling each other all sorts of wrong things, and then they just scream at each other, "Fuck you." When I saw that, I was like, dude, that's it. Like, that was not meant to be. Like, the way I saw that is like, those guys at that moment, they were free. Even if they were in a little jail, they were just like free to just speak their minds without any filter, which also sometimes I think is the other extreme. We should be a bit more mindful of our actions. But, you know, having to basically just, you know, walk on eggshells around society, that's like, it's like a whole of society is now a big as borderline society. You can't say anything, you can't defend anybody, and they just come up with all this I don't know, with these new notions that really, in my opinion, just make no sense. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to fight anybody, or I'm going to try to stone anyone to death just because, you know, they have, you know, a different opinion than I do. I don't care how people will choose to live their lives and what opinions they have and what party they want to vote for. I don't vote myself. I don't believe in any of that. That's my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the problem. We're always swinging between these extremes, and I think we should just go back to learning to trust and respect each other a little more, as opposed to, you know, putting everything in a tiny box and the color and a party and your left and your right and you're a, I don't know, a conservative, or how do you call the other side?
Oh, you've lost me completely. I've just lost.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I know in the UK, you know, that they have. It's like in the US, they call them libtards.
Yeah, liberal.
Yeah, they're liberals, and then they call them libtards, and then the conservatives are the conservatives. Like, that's it, and that's the end of the discussion. There's no point in sitting down and figuring out like how all these differing opinions can meet. And but that's always been a big thing in my life. Don't ask me why. I've been. It's almost like a passion obsession of mine to try to find people that would very unlikely be friends and just figure out what the things in common are, because we have to live with each other whether we like it or not.
I think that's a big American thing as well, isn't it? As conservative and liberal, for some reason, they almost will not even associate with each other. Like I've seen people that won't get into relationships when they find out their political beliefs and things like that. I've seen a lot of that online. It is crazy, isn't it? See, I mean, you're always going to have a difference of opinion or belief, but just because you fall into one of these two factors, you cannot be with that other person. It's it's almost like it used to be in racial things as well, isn't it? In Europe,
Yeah.
it's kind of a similar thing, But we're going on a tangent with that there a little bit.
Yeah, my bad.
Maybe
Feel free to bring it back.
That's all right. But we'll bring it back in. I mean, something very relevant as well, because I wanted to talk about cultural differences, because obviously you're from Venezuela, and I'm gonna put the elephant in the room out there. The first time we spoke about this, I was like, "Oh, right, you're from Brazil." I was like, "Is Venezuela in Brazil?" And you're like, "Lee, what the fuck are you talking about?" But listen, right? I was even dating a Brazilian girl once, and I used to think the same thing, and she never pulled me on it. You're the first person to pull me on this. But where this actually comes from, I wanted to explain myself. When you look at a map, a world map, when you look at South America in big bold letters, it doesn't say South America, it says Brazil.
That's true.
So for me, in
true.
my head, all of that was Brazil, and Venezuela and Colombia, they were all part of Brazil. So for some reason, it just didn't compute, because I never got pulled on it. It's like when you look at America, and then you've got California. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah,
you're obviously going to focus more on, like, anyway, at the end of the day, flags, borders, man-made concepts that make no real sense to me anymore. But I would say that maybe we all study the maps that are closer to us. It's like if somebody asks me right now to put a finger on the map where Cambodia is, I have no fucking idea. And I have no idea what other country is next to it or what the border is. I'm really sorry, because I wish I knew. That's not to say that it has more or less importance than any other.
Yeah, it was, like I say, it was a crazy notion for me. It's something I've never been pulled on. Even having a girlfriend who was Brazilian as well, I never got pulled on this fact. It's like she must have looked at me and thought, "Oh, I'm probably a bit of a language barrier. I'm not understanding what Lee's saying." But yeah, like I said, this is the first time anybody pulled me on it. But I wanted to bring it up because you're living in Europe now, aren't you? Where are you based in Europe?
I am in Germany. It's a beautiful little town called Burscheid, which is close to Düsseldorf and Cologne. So I'm within very, like, I can very easily reach either or.
So why Germany out of all the European? I'm guessing you moved to Germany because it's in Europe and the career side of it and things. But why Germany? What stood out for that place?
Well, I always dreamed of living in Europe. Of course, when you dream of something, you still look at it with like rose-tinted glasses. That then you live in the place, and then you have all this, crazy taxes and responsibilities and everything. That, of course, and everyone's going to tell you, "Oh, of course, you should be proud of paying your taxes," because I'm not proud of paying my taxes if I'm not able to cover my own costs first. Like, before I can help society, I should have my own house in the beginning, in the first place. But that's a different story. That's now that I'm here, I have the same problems that everybody else has, so I complain about the same things. But other than that, it is a beautiful place. The quality of life, of course, you can see it, especially if you travel just a tiny bit to, for example, last weekend I was in Istanbul. Istanbul is a beautiful place. Like, the city is amazing. There's a lot of chaos. There's so much going on. But if you go to the outskirts of Istanbul, I was like, I'm in Venezuela right now. And I mean that, like, also, I hate to say this because it's my country as well, but it's also sadly the truth. Like, some of the bigger cities, of course, they are more developed, but the more rural areas, I think the rural areas in places like Germany or the Netherlands, they look a lot better developed and cleaner than in places like Venezuela, where there's just a lot of poverty sadly happening out there. It's just it's like they've been almost abandoned. You know what I'm saying? And somehow, they still manage. They're still happy. They're still, there's still stuff to do, and you somehow in between all those streets, you find your way to whatever you have to go. But I always wanted to live in Europe. It was always a dream for me, and of course, my music works the best in everything that is mainland Europe, like and also, well, Russia and Ukraine. Back to that subject. It's always a tough one for me because Russia is a place that I think it's the only country that really recognized the value of my project the way I believe should be recognized, because I've been fighting for this sound for such a long time. And, if I'm playing in Moscow, I'm headlining next to NDC. That doesn't happen anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that's something that, that really, really hurts me, because that wasn't a choice I made. I'll be glad to be, headlining Rampage as well. They just don't call me. You know what I'm saying? I'd be glad to be headlining Boomtown. They just don't call me. I'd be glad to be headlining Bankface Weekend. But that's the thing. There's something that it didn't seem to take off elsewhere as much as it did in Russia or in Ukraine. In Czech Republic as well. Czech Republic was another place that really. That's why I get to play, in places like Let It Roll. But I still don't play main stage when I play Let It Roll. Like there's still something, there's still a ceiling, and I'm there looking at it like, why are you guys not just putting me there like these people did? We proved it. We proved that it works. Look at the numbers. Everything's fine. But it's just on the live side of things. It never got as far as I could get with places like Russia or Ukraine or Japan. And well, now seeing my two favorite places going to war is like, I mean, obviously that's a very selfish reason to judge it by. There's people dying, and there's entire cities being destroyed. Like, this is the real issue right here. Not me not being able to play in a place or another. But what I'm trying to say here is these things were the natural consequence of me just being almost in a natural way, closer to certain people. But like I said, it wasn't a choice that I made. It was just, I put my music out there, and this is where this is gravitating towards. And as a consequence of that, I go there more. I make friends more in those places. And when this whole thing started, actually, my first thought was, which of my friends are in either Russia and Ukraine, and how do I get them out? I helped a good friend of mine that lived in Kiev at the time this whole thing started. We managed to get him a place in Poland. They let him get out because he is Canadian Ukrainian, so he could get out because he was Canadian. If he had a Ukrainian passport, they don't let him out. It's like, no, you get a uniform and you go to the front and you go to die, and you go to kill other people who have the other uniform. And the Russians, the same thing. No, you can't get out of the country. You have to get on a uniform. You have to get a weapon, and you have to go kill the people that we tell you to kill. Yeah. This is how I see it. I'm not able to get on any side of it, because I think everyone is a victim of war in the end.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I mean, we speak to, like you say, you talk about contacts and things you have in Russia, and like I said, with all this going on, is I know Russian and Ukrainian producers that are great friends and speak to each other, because like I say, they're just the victims of it. They're not obviously controlling it, of what's going on and things like that. But you bring up Russia and the drum and bass in there. I mean, in my eyes, a couple of things with Russia. Number one, it's one of the toughest scenes to crack in the world with drum and bass. As in, it takes a lot to get booked to get there. There's only a certain amount of people they book, but when you're there, it's great, and you continue getting booked. And the other thing as well, they've got some of the biggest events in the world that you've never heard of. Do you know what I mean? And I think the first time I ever saw drum and bass on a crazy large scale was the 2008 Pirate Station, like bigger than anything now as well, isn't it? I mean, you look at Rampage, Let It Roll. I mean, this place had indoor arenas with 30,000 people in these indoor arenas, and they're still rolling those out, aren't they? Still there. And I think even some of the artists are still the same artists from 2008 as well. I mean, DJSS, he's still over there all the time. Do you know what I mean? But you rarely see some of the big new breed over there. They've kind of stuck with the artists that they know from the early noughties and things like that, haven't they?
It's that's just said. It's a tough scene to crack. I don't know how I got so lucky. It just happened one day that, the guys from Radio Record just called me. I think it was I made a song called Revolution, and they use this theme. They have different themes on each Pirate Station, similar to the Cirque du Soleil. Every festival has a theme, and I always thought that was such a beautiful thing. They have all these people like dancing on stage and doing all these circus tricks, like flying around. It's unbelievable. It's a beautiful thing, and there's a lot of performance aspect to it. It's not just, you're not just the guy there with a hoodie, looking depressed and pushing buttons. No, you have to perform. And I think that's why me wearing a mask especially was something that fit right into the Russian scene, because they're very
Well, again, they were one of the first to do these big stage shows as well, weren't they? Do you know what I mean? They were doing it before some of the big American brands, even.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I implore anybody watching, go to YouTube, look up Pirate Station 2008, 2009, 2010, and even beyond that, it'll surprise you what you see there in Russia. It's phenomenal what they've done.
Yeah, man, really, really good people as well. Just ravers, and like I said, I separate these things from politics. It's ravers.
Yeah,
it's it makes no sense at all to put everyone in the same box, so to say. But sadly, that's happening a lot. And I guess in a way I get it. If you're, especially if you're in a war zone and you've been fighting this for such a long time, the only association you will have with the Russian flag is this. So, I can also understand why someone who's struggled in Ukraine and then hears us both maybe talking about how amazing drum and bass festivals are in Russia, they're just going to get triggered. And I completely understand that. I completely relate to that. I feel compassionate about it as well. But the only thing I can say, being myself from a place like Venezuela, where we're always also pitted against each other constantly, when you get out of that and you look at things on a bigger scale, you really realize that we're all victims of it. We're all people on different sides given different uniforms and just being told because of some old guy had a beef with another guy on the phone or whatever, and then they say, here's your uniform, go kill these people. Or because this guy says this place of land is mine, and this other place, no, this is mine. And then we kill each other because of that. The land does not belong to anybody. It's all a big illusion. The land does not belong to anybody. We die and the land's going to stay there. We're not going to, nobody inherits anything. It's all a big lie. So
what was it like growing up in Venezuela? I mean, obviously being a musician as well. How did you go about kind of getting into it when you were back home, and what brought you to that?
Well, I mean, I had influences from different places. There were my dad used to listen in the car to a lot of smooth jazz, and I would always hear stuff like Stanley Jordan, George Benson. Those was some of the first artists that I heard when I was a little kid. Larry Carlton. And they also played a lot of classical music, like Four Seasons by Vivaldi. That was the kind of stuff that my parents would always play in the car. And Pink Floyd as well. My dad loved Pink Floyd. And I slowly started getting all these little influences, Then I then I heard music on the radio back then. Thankfully, it was the 90s, and I think music on the radio was great in the 90s. You had, Nirvana, Metallica, Pantera in some cases, but it was mostly Nirvana and Metallica who made it to the top radio, especially in Venezuela. I would say there were some bands that maybe were a bit too much for the radio, but there was a lot more space for rock and metal. It wasn't just one thing or just the other. It was space for everything, and I loved that. Even if people had beef or whatever, you like pop, I like metal, but there was always a space for everything, and pop artists were great. You had Michael Jackson, you had freaking, you had Madonna, you had, and even all of these, boy bands and, this formula with 5 guys or 4 guys and 5 girls, and they were all singing and in sync and stuff. Those people were singing at least. There was no autotune. They gotta train, they gotta sing, they gotta dance. I mean, even if you look at, at the Backstreet Boys, for example, great performers, great singers. Whatever you want to say, whether you like the music or not, you have to give them that. It was a time where artists were still artists, I think, and I think every single one of those things definitely had an influence on me. I slowly started discovering more things as I went deeper into every direction. I was interested in almost every music genre, but I think metal was definitely the thing that grabbed me, like the most extreme bands, bands that in the 90s were burning churches in Norway. I'm sorry. Those were the bands I was into, and I loved that. I loved especially the fact that they were so offensive. Like these bands are burning churches. Like, play that loud as you can, and let's just piss off every Christian we can. As
a youngster as well, it's almost like, oh, that's naughty. Oh, I like that. I want to get into that. Like when you listen to Guns N' Roses albums, the first reason I listened to those is because there was loads of swearing in it. and that's what attracted me to it. So it's almost that like anti kind of things you shouldn't be doing that your parents don't want you to listen to and things like that. I think that's the attraction. But I found a lot with drum and bass artists that I've spoke to as well, including yourself and me. I mean, my background is I grew up listening to soul music. You grew up listening to jazz. I went on to rock and metal, and that was like my music where I chose. You're the same, and I heard that a lot. And then a lot of people end up somewhere with drum and bass. I mean, this does seem to be quite a commonality of that story to get to drum and bass. Why do you think that might be?
It's a very good question. I think it's because, like, stylistically speaking, drum and bass has the ability to blend in with anything. You can't make, I mean, you could. There's actually a duo out there that they're doing techno and metal, like actual Berlin style techno, I mean, with metal. I think it sounds great. But usually techno is, you know what you're going to get if you listen to techno. If you change it just a tiny bit, that's already, it's already not techno. The same thing with trance or house. They're like very specific sounds, and there's some subgenres for sure, but I don't think you could blend drum and bass with jazz and it makes sense. You could blend drum and bass with techno sounds and you have technoid. You could blend drum and bass with metal and you have metal and bass. You could blend drum and bass with, I don't know if ska and bass is really a thing, but you could. It actually fits. It fits really, really well.
Funnily enough, Gabba has that kind of thing as well, doesn't it? You can really blend it with quite a lot, despite what it is and its aggressive nature. It does fit with anything, doesn't it? You can have pop music with it. You can have Irish folk music. It all works in some way, shape, or form, doesn't it? Constantly. What were your first influences then with metal? Because I know drum and bass came a bit later on, but that was obviously the preliminary, part of your journey into who you are now.
Well, I mean, some of the first bands that I heard, of course, like the usual suspects, Metallica, Sepultura, the bands that were, I would say, back in the day, the most influential ones. Like basically a lot of people were, a lot of bands, a lot of genres that happened in metal derived from the sound that Metallica, Sepultura was doing. I can even compare albums like next to each other and be like, oh yeah, that's from Metallica, that's from Sepultura, that sort of thing. Like I think Metallica and Sepultura were some of the most, and Black Sabbath, of course, and all of the classic, like the first metal band, so to say, the first hard rock heavy metal band, so to say. There was always something that came from something before. And those were the first bands that I listened to. But there was an element of fear that I discovered in black metal. I mean, these days you just realize it's just a bunch of old men just looking a little bit too much like they are LARPing. You know what I'm saying? It kind of lost the mystique to it. But the first time I heard a black metal band, it was like, this just felt like I was enshrouded by a dark mystical, like I don't know. I felt like I felt like the gates of hell were about to open.
It's a different emotion than you're used to with music, isn't it? Completely
exactly
different.
Exactly. And that really pulled me in because I like that element of fear. I was like, I've realized that on this side, all I could see was all I could feel was this fear, but on the other side of it, there was so much freedom, and that's something that I think was, in my opinion, really important about black metal as a genre. Black metal was just as wrong and offensive as it could get, and then there was, death metal, gore grind, which was basically, you had pictures of someone's actual gods, or like brujeria, the first album, the Matando Güeros one, which is it's a totally wrong title to have on any album. That's literally means Güeros is like a derogative. It's a racist word to call someone white in the U.S. Basically, it's like it would be essentially the equivalent of saying killing the N-word. I'm not gonna say it because it's the equivalent, but for black people, and it's a word that was created in Mexico. So imagine an album that's called Matando Güeros, and you have the head of I don't even know who it was. I think it was like a drug dealer or something. It was an actual picture of a beheading. It wasn't a drawing. It wasn't like a Cannibal Corpse album covers, which were like these really colorful and beautiful drawings by somebody. You can just draw whatever if you have enough imagination, but that's still a drawing. This was an actual picture, and the fact that it just became that I was just so extreme and so wrong, it really attracted me, because on the other side of fear there was this newfound freedom, because at the end of the day we realized, well, at the end it's just, maybe it's wrong, but it really is a picture. It's just a bunch of people screaming a bunch of stuff, and maybe they're just trying to rile some people up. And I love that, and I was I relished in that, and then slowly I went into other genres as well. When drum and bass, I think when I heard drum and bass the first time was probably, I'll tell you the exact first track that I heard that was drum and bass. I think it was probably I don't think some people consider this drum and bass. Like you could consider it metal and bass as well. It was this. I think it was the first time that I heard an Amen break. That collaboration between Atari Teenage Riot and Slayer. On the Spawn soundtrack. That was it. So to me, actually, drum and bass is synonymous with metal. There's just no way to separate them. When I hear people saying, "Oh no, that doesn't blend well," I'm like, "What are you talking about? Drum and bass is metal."
Well, it perfectly merges at the most aggressive end of each spectrum. That's when I think it merges the best, doesn't it? I mean, we look at, like I say, some of your early stuff, and then maybe what started neurofunk, like the dark step sound, current value, things like that. The really heavy stuff. That's when it starts to merge. I think for that type of stuff, I think there's a lot of testosterone involved in that type of music, and I think that's why it's obviously very appealing to men, because it's almost like a release, and that's the aggressiveness. I mean, this is why men like boxing more and things like that. Do you know what I mean? It's a testosterone release, and the music is obviously adamant to that. I mean, like I said, the covers and things. I mean, I've got records here, Gabba records, and it's aggressive music, which is obviously there's soul to that, even though it's 500 BPM. It comes from somewhere. There's that release to it, but the covers are just kind of, it's got to complement the music. And I can pull a couple of covers out here, and it's got like amputee porn on the front covers of the sleeves, and it's just things to grab your attention and cause a bit of a ruckus, because again, controversy sells as well, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's always been there. But I think, I mean, it'd make a good study, that, wouldn't it, about aggressive music linked to testosterone and to men, and obviously how that obviously all blends together as well. I think there'd be I
would say that, but of course these days a lot of this as they call it, gender normative, but not like, a lot of these things are being challenged. I think in some way for the best. In other ways, maybe it's a little bit too like, okay, I mean, there are gonna be some things here that maybe, sure, like this is more appealing to men, this is more appealing to women. That's just the way it goes. But I'm kind of glad it's being challenged, because I definitely think we should get more women doing something in the scene. I think this whole like rude boy nature of the scene is also very like, I like to hear a song that gives me this energy, but I don't think, at least me personally, I never intended to like, oh well, let's keep women out. On the contrary, bring them in, show me something, like make music as well, like the DJ. Let's see you doing. Let's see what you can bring to the scene. And that takes me to actually someone that I discovered very recently. It was an amazing singer-songwriter. She goes by the name of Reeps, and she's from, if I'm not mistaken, Gloucestershire. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Gloucestershire.
Thank you, Gloucestershire.
Just down the road from me.
Yeah, there you go. And she's amazing. She basically, I discovered her because she had these tracks and she needed like production services, and at first she's just asking me to do 2 tracks, and I'm thinking, well, if she needs me to do the tracks, I'm thinking I have to do the whole thing from scratch. And then I gave her a price, and she was like, yeah, well, it's a little bit steep, because making a whole track is a different animal. It's not the same as mixing, And then I was like, listen, how about this? Like, do you have any demo of something you've done? Because maybe we might be able to do this. Maybe what you need is not like a full-blown production. Maybe all you need is just a little bit of help. And the tracks were great, man. I was like, dude, this is amazing. All you need is a mix. You're good. Let me take care of that. No, it's not gonna cost you this much. It's gonna be much. And I made it a lot easier. And she was so happy. And what started as a client, service relationship, we ended up becoming she's like family to me right now. I was like, she needs to be heard more. People need to know. And her vocals were so on point and so good. Now I got her to collaborate with Toronto's Broken, as you also know, also a great one of the more recent artists that are mixing drum and bass with metal.
He lives just down the road to me as well, so he's not.
There you go. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of what he's been doing. I think it's one of the, I would say one of the people that people should. How do you say it? Keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on. Like his new album's great. And Reeves is also featured on a few of these tracks. Like when I started to talking to her about this, it was like, all you need to do is be heard more, and the best way to do that is through collaborations. Don't worry too much about the things you cannot do. If you cannot mix, worry about the things you can do, and just join somebody who can maybe complement that, because what you can do best is something that somebody else out there needs, and that's it. That's how you blend in there. So I got her in touch with Toronto's Broken, got her in touch with Pythias. She's also on the new Pythias record that's coming out in a few days, I think. Yeah. And she's worked with Artifact, and to me this was like, I'm so happy when I'm able to facilitate these connections, because that's how I learned to grow the community. That's actually how I learned that most people make money, is helping other people make money. Help other people connect, help other people just make things happen, and then just money follows.
Yeah.
So I'm all about, more women contributing more to the scene. What I'm not about is people faking it. And this is my thing exactly. Like, why should anyone be fake about what they're doing? This is the one thing that I think is just, it's not productive. It doesn't help the case, because when someone's like, well, this is my track. No, that's not your track. Like, somebody else is doing it. Just say it out loud. We can still very much say, like, I am a better vocalist. I am a better, violin player. I'm much better at this than I am at doing this other technical stuff. That's great, because, for instance, I can't sing like that. I can't play the violin for shit, but I can mix. So let's blend this together and let's see how we together can mix. And then that's much better. That's much more real. We need more of that. What we don't need is fake producers. Doesn't matter what gender you are. That's what I think.
It's a big talking point, isn't it, on the internet right now? There's a lot of people going into it. My opinion on this is that I think where there's money and the agents are looking, and where there's a loophole that people are pushing, they're trying to fill that gap a lot. And it seems as though a lot of these agents are plucking people out of maybe got the look, they've got the attitude, the charisma, and they're putting them in that position, getting some of these experts to actually write the music for them, and just using that almost as a marketing thing. I mean, you look at things like Simon Cowell. He does it with all the singers on the TV show that he does. Britain's Got Talent and things like that. They're taking these people and they're taking these boy bands, and they just have somebody else write the music for them. But it's the same, like I say, it's happening in drum and bass. Agents are getting older people, they're making them into stars, and they're just basically, well, no word for it, they're using them for all they can. And again, you don't know how to make tunes, don't worry, we've got somebody who'll do that. And it's almost like putting together like a Lego producer, isn't it? A Lego artist. Here it is, the perfect artist. Let's get them on EDC, let's get them on these big festivals, and we'll just wait until their age runs out or they become less interested, and we'll just get another one and put it in place as well.
Yeah,
I do blame it on the agencies more, because I mean, if you're young and somebody comes to you and says, we're going to make you famous, here's a bunch of money, there's not many people going to turn that down, is there, as well?
Yeah, I mean? and I think people should be really careful about that, because it's incredible how they screw people over in the end. They get the right to fame, and then in the end, all these people are getting the most, the majority of the percentage of the music, so to say. But that's also, like, in a way, that's kind of like they kind of shoot themselves in the foot when they allow other people to do everything for them.
Yeah.
Because how can an artist that doesn't do anything come and claim, oh, I want like, but that's my music, I want a bigger share of the royalties? They're gonna say, no, that's not your music.
Well, there's two things that's going to happen down the line, isn't there? Number one, you're going to get to a point where, okay, nobody's doing anything for you, and you just drop off the face of the earth, never, because you've not learned anything, you've got no talent, you can't do, well, I would say you got no talent, but you haven't got the learning of that, of producing music. So you're just going to drop off and disappear. And a lot of artists have done that. And another thing is as well, you start to get more knowledgeable of the music industry, and eventually you're going to, fuck, all that music, I signed it for life to this company or that company. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, I want my music back. And we've seen it online. There's been a few big producers. There was a trance producer recently. He'd set up a GoFundMe to try and get people to donate money so he could buy all his back catalogue back that was actually owned by some big record labels to own it. Because it is apparent when you've been in the industry like 20 years, you do want to own your old music, don't you? You want to come back to that and have your legacy.
Well, I wouldn't mind having a label that owns the music, as long as it's a fair label. I am happy and thankful that I am signed to a label that has treated me very fairly. They helped me a lot, and now, of course, the deal is changing a little bit more because my situation also changed. Like, when they signed me first, they were taking a bigger chunk of the royalties, but they were also giving me a generous advance, which I used to get out of Venezuela. That was my ticket out of the country to be able to go live in the States. And I struggled a bit there, but I just kept pushing forward. And then it brought me here, and I kept pushing forward. And here I am with a room full of synths, that now the next step would be, of course, owning your own place. I know that these prices are ridiculous, but there's always a way. There's always, you got to probably maybe look elsewhere. But that's a situation that changed for me in the beginning. All I wanted was to get out, and they helped me. So I try to be a thankful guy, I cannot forget what they did for me. So I'm also like, I also think there's the other side to this, which is artists not remembering that labels do help. Labels are not necessarily always these evil people, corporations that are just, some people are definitely used. And there's definitely some evil people out there. We got to watch for them. But Monarch Music Group is a very good label in this regard. It's a fair label. The way they, the way they treat their artists is good. If something works, it works, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't, and it's fine. And they don't need to, they don't need to try any harder. But if something is working, they really, really get behind it, and they got behind my music for as long as I've been signed to them. I just finished my third record. The Superstars record is the third record in a 3-record deal, exclusive record deal. And we decided to keep doing more. And even though I could right now just release my own records and forget about it and keep 100% of the royalties, but I'm like, listen, man, I can do that, but I'd rather just keep this in as part of the discography that I'm building with you guys, because you have really helped me, and I motivate them, they motivate me. Now we're discussing maybe a different share of the royalties also from the past records, so I would still be getting more money for the music that I already did, and in exchange I'm still doing records for them, and I'm happy with that. That's something. This is what people should look out for, though, isn't it? I mean, obviously this is a very good situation there with yourself, and it is, I mean, really it's all about legacy, isn't it? If you've been writing music for 15-20 years, you still want to obviously not necessarily have to earn from that music, but be able to fall back to it, do new things with it and things like that. And if you are signing your music to labels, I think it's always good to make sure up front you're having a look into things like that, isn't it? That's kind of more the point I was getting across, No, I know what you're saying. I have to say that I've been lucky, because there's so many record labels screwing people over. Also in drum and bass, I realize that drum and bass doesn't sell a lot in comparison, but even if you owe a couple hundred to an artist, man, like some of these kids, that can be like that can mean a lot. Back in the day when I was still living in Venezuela, $200, that was like 6 months worth of food. Now it's not. Now it's like maybe a couple of weeks because the prices have been adjusted. But that's another. I'm not gonna go out on a tangent again. So, but yeah. And I think a lot of people forget that. I have a lot of people that released a lot of labels that release my music. Those people don't even talk to me. They don't care about giving me any royalties. Some guy actually scammed me out of like $5,000 or something because according to him, like he owned the masters. And, he said, well, the contract's over, so I don't have to pay you anything. I'm like, no, dude. If the contract's over, it means you don't get to keep the masters. If the contract's over, it means you don't have the right to sell them anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, as long as you're selling the music, you have to pay the artist. And he was trying to like go around that and whatever. Like, I don't owe you anything. And this was like $6,000, man. It wasn't. It's not a lot of money, but it's substantial money.
Yeah, of course.
And there's been a lot of people who have done great things for me, who have helped me a lot, but there's been people who also try to screw me over because that's the world. There's got to be, you can't just judge everyone the same, but you got to be careful. So I'm lucky that I signed with Monarch Music Group. They are a great label. They are a fair label. Anybody out there, if they're looking for a good label, send your demos to them. I'm not sure if they sign actual drum and bass acts. I think they sign me more because of the metal side of things, but I'm pretty sure they would be open to that. I mean, I've been even thinking about putting together a label with them, and I'm pretty sure that's something that's like a feasible idea, something that can push this sound a bit more to bring more attention to it, drum and bass and metal hybrid.
I love the relationships like that I build. I mean, obviously networking is a big thing, like you touched on earlier. One of the biggest things at the minute to make yourself a recognized artist is to collaborate, isn't it? The more collaborations you do, the more you get out there. I mean, Spotify, not to go into the whole business model of Spotify, but one of the things that they put out there to artists is saying that if you collaborate more, we'll show you off more. Like, obviously people want to get onto the editorial playlist where you're actually going to get a huge amount of streams and create more revenue. They actually look for people collaborating more so to actually show that off as well and reach more audience. I mean, you're obviously you're very in tune with reaching different audiences. You've combined metal, you've combined drum and bass, and something else I did want to talk about as well, because I'm a big MMA fan. I love martial arts. I have done for years. I've done it myself. So I want to talk to you a bit about that. But you had a track, obviously, with Mike Ruckus, didn't you? Bring It On. And I believe it was used for World Series of Fighting, wasn't it? How on earth did that come about? Are you a big MMA fan to start with? And it came from that, or?
I'm going to go ahead and disappoint you by saying that, no, I'm not. It's cringe for me. I see these people beating the crap out of each other, and all I'm thinking is like, why? That's too much testosterone for me. But I know that it really, it's something that has a very, very big fan base.
It's another audience for you as well, isn't it? That's another big audience. And
I'm glad, if my music is motivating anybody for whatever, I mean, as long as it's not like, hate crimes or anything like that. But, if it's that's a valid it's a valid career. It's a valid way to go about life, and that's good. If people want to show off their physical prowess like that, and they feel that the music that I'm doing fits that, then why the hell not? The way that happened was actually because of my former manager, James Jetta, who's someone that I am very, very thankful for, someone that I learned a lot from. He's also from the US. He was the one who made that connection happen. Like he was not very in tune with the drum and bass side of things. There were a lot of things that sadly, and it was also part of the reason why we had to split ways. But
was that when you were in the USA as well? Then when
it was when I was living in the US. But there was something that he was really good at doing, and that was creating opportunities out of thin air. Like I just from one moment to the next, he would see this whole project. He was really invested in it. He's like, this is sick. He looked at the mask. He listened to Bring Back the Glory. But when he listens to Bring Back the Glory, the first thing he's thinking is MMA. And I'm like, I'm here thinking video games. And, but that was the thing. Like, we were just in a way we were different people, but we also had very different. In some cases, in some things, we had also a difference of political opinions, but I never let that tarnish our friendship because as I said, like to me, it's like people have to learn to respect each other even if they cannot meet eye to eye all the time. And that thanks to that, we were able to keep a long lasting friendship. And he was the one who made that connection because on that side of things, he was the more testosterone guy. I'm a bit more of a nerd. You know what I'm saying? Somewhere in between. And a nerd maybe with a mask that looks like it has a lot of testosterone.
Yeah,
and
he probably had the connections already then, didn't he? With obviously the MMA circuit and things like that. But yeah,
and NBC Sports and all these people. So thanks to that, we got there, and also thanks to him, we got on TNT for All Elite Wrestling.
Oh, right. I didn't know that one. Yeah, that passed me in the research. Okay, so that's a bit more recent as well then.
Yeah, that was a bit more recent. And he had a lot of great connections in that world. I also met we were a lot in Las Vegas. There was a lot of people that I met there and it was like, wow, like freaking I don't know, Steven Tyler just walking by and he's just saying hello, and I'm like, what the hell? Like he had a lot of really good connections. And he helped as much as he could, until I just decided to take back the reins, especially because I was living here in Europe. I realized that the way the music was evolving and the way the goals were being reached was a little bit different. He was a guy that had no fear whatsoever. He was someone who would tell me, listen, man, if people love you in Russia, go there and play there. He just didn't care about the consequences. Like, the people are going to change. Governments are going to change. You can't live in fear. And I was like, dude, I respect you so much for saying that, but that is just not a wise choice right now. And that's what those were some of the differences in opinion that we always had, because he was a bit crazier in that regard. And I love the fact that he because I needed a bit of a push sometimes, but I try to be wiser these days, especially because I see what they do to people online and how people can lose like entire careers and sources of income. Like it's easy to be controversial and get yourself canceled on purpose when you own like a mansion and you have millions in streams and everything, and then your streams are gonna go down from 1 billion to maybe just 100 million. Oh, poor you. You know what I'm saying? It's a difference. It's a big difference. So I think when you have a safety net to fall back in, I think you can take more risks like that. It's like when they. I think that's that was something that I was a bit too. He didn't like that of me.
Yeah.
Like I always took very calculated risks. He had no limits.
He got a structure, hadn't he? Got a structure of what works for him and things like that.
Yeah.
Did you get any other kind of? I mean, obviously that's kind of big TV signings. Did you ever get any signings with like computer games and things like that as well?
Sure, that was something that thankfully I was able to manage, especially during the pandemic, because it's the one thing that saved my career. In the beginning of the pandemic, I was already funny enough on the Russia tip. I was thinking of moving to Russia because during the pandemic, Russia still had events happening. I was like, well, screw it. I mean, if we're not gonna be able to get out of our homes anymore, if we're gonna have to wear these masks all the time, if events are gonna be canceled, and then I'm out. I'm out, and I'm gonna go to whatever people love me, and then if I'm gonna die there, then I'll die there. I was ready for it. I realize it's not a very, how to say, I know that it's not the wisest thing to say, but the lockdown was something that really, really did my head in. Like I had to spend it alone in this apartment in a completely strange culture. Because the German culture was a big shock for me, especially coming from Venezuela. We touched on that at some point as well. And I just desperately wanted out. I needed to go back to a community of people who loved me, of people who cared about about what I did.
Did you go back home then? Did you go back home during the?
No. I stayed here because I was hired by Super Hot Team to do the soundtrack of the continuation of the sequel of the Super Hot game, which is Super Hot Mind Control Delete. that was the salary of the year, basically. Like that one job was like, this saved my career. And I started getting like one-off remixes, and then I realized, hey, this whole remix thing is actually taking off. Like, people were more interested in more of the metal remixes, and especially now because if you mentioned the Spotify collaboration tip, and I started also getting some other people into that. I was helping other people grow numbers, and with that they were also helping me grow numbers. So Zardonic became a bit of a platform to help other people grow as well. And that's how I could create a product that, you know, that had real value, because people pay for a remix, they know they're going to make their money back.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be in 2 months or 10 years, but the money always comes back, because the royalties are always being generated.
Yeah.
So that was something that saved my career, the video game industry. These days I've also been working with much more projects. I just finished one as we speak, and actually Sega just emailed me last like a couple of weeks ago, and I was supposed to get on a call with them. Like that's the level of clients I'm getting in the video game industry, and I'm just here like, how the hell did this happen? So
Zardonic meets Sonic the Hedgehog. That's next.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, I'm already seeing this. I'm imagining it. Like, imagine like a Sonic character, with big blue spikes. Yeah. Well, I don't know which game is gonna be yet, because we haven't discussed this yet. But you know, they emailed me and they sent an NDA, and then, well, I'm supposed to look into this NDA, sign it, and then whatever they tell me, I'm not gonna be able to tell you or tell anything on this interview. But I don't know yet if it's going to be a Sonic game. That would be great, though. That would be really cool.
That would be very cool.
Yeah.
I get asked the question a lot. I mean, one of the reasons I was talking about this with the games, obviously from talking about the licenses from TV shows, a big question I get a lot from producers who come to my label is, what's the best way I can get my music license to games or films or TV shows? I mean, for you, obviously some of that opportunity has come from having a good manager. But what other advice could you give up-and-coming producers on trying to get some of the music signed to stuff like that?
I think I think there's a combination of factors. Your music needs to have a bit more of an epic element to it. I think a lot of drum and bass is missing that these days, if I'm honest with you. And the drum and bass is becoming extremely minimalistic. Everyone's just obsessed about making everything as loud as humanly possible. There's no musical element to it anymore.
Where did the 3-minute intros go? Where have they gone? Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, man. I feel that's something that's really, really missing from drum and bass these days. It's all and of course we're all a little bit guilty of it, because we have to adapt to the market. But I'm also, it actually concerns me, because I hear, there's a lack of anthems in modern drum and bass. That would be a way to put it. Like, I think if you can create anthems, that's gonna get you more likely into like video games. Something that sounds, you know, that when you write it, you can see it, you can hear it in one of these video games.
Yeah.
If you can hear your track on I don't know, on a Needs for Speed video game, then it's more likely that's going to be there. You maybe, you know, you study the music that you can get there. And also, one thing is also getting music licensed, music that you've already done. Another thing is composing music for video games. I've done both. When you're composing music for video games, that's a completely different animal. Like, it's about the game. It's not about your music.
Yeah.
It's not about, like, you know, I'm not going to force drum and bass into a game like Super Hot. It was actually, there's no drum and bass in that soundtrack, except for like a remix that I did just for shits and giggles, and it's like a bonus track. It's not really in the game. So those are two different things. If somebody wants to compose for video games, I would definitely try to think in terms more of telling a story with your track, as opposed to trying to get a sick drop or you know, a loud snare or a track that sounds like as inhumanly loud as possible. That's not what it is about. It's about telling a story. And the more you're able to tell a story through your music, the more likely you're going to, I think you're going to get the music tied to that sort of content that is also telling stories, such as video games and film and TV. It's telling stories, so the music has to tell a story as well. If the music's not telling a story, then it's not very likely to get licensed for that, I think.
Yeah. Well, you've had, I mean, probably one of the biggest back catalogues I've seen in drum and bass. And I was, I mean, I know where my beginnings were with finding you, and we'll come to that in a minute. But I did notice that one of your official first releases was an actual album, wasn't it? It wasn't a single. It wasn't on an EP of various artists. But it's 2004. I believe you had, I've actually noted this down because I'd never heard the label, V-Net Music. So, I mean, that was quite bold. That was quite bold to do an album there, wasn't it, to start with? What made you do that? Come out with for your first release.
First of all, coming from the metal scene, there's no singles in the metal scene.
No.
You do albums, you do stories, you create concepts. That was something that to me was really important from the beginning. But, you know, I'm going to disappoint you a little here and just say, like, V-Net Music Development was just a net label that I put together with a friend of mine, and he gave me that platform. He gave me the server. He gave me everything to be able to put it online. It was the first time I actually had, I mean, you could say it could have become a full-blown label in its own right. But in the beginning, it was just like, you know, I didn't know where to upload my music. I didn't know what to do.
It was a self-release. It was almost like you've got your own little Bandcamp place kind of thing, I suppose.
Exactly. And he basically put that together for me, and I'm so thankful to him. So still to this day, we're still very good friends. And that album, well, you know, I did what I wanted to do, and it was, admittedly, it was a very. If you go through that album and you listen to it, you realize that, yeah, this is like, you know, a guy just delving into electronic music. It sounds like a lot of demos with some ideas that had a lot of potential. Like, for sure, there were some tracks there that I'm like, hey, that bass line was great, but then the rest of the track isn't. Or then the next three tracks are like, yeah, this is just a bit of experimental stuff. But the thing is, drum and bass for me back then, like we're talking, as you said, 2004, I remember some of the first drum and bass tracks that I heard were like, do you remember an act called, I think it was Infiltrator or something like that?
Yeah, a US act.
Yeah, Light Fracture Dark.
Yeah.
This album that was released on mp3.com, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That's what, to me, drum and bass was. It was this like industrial, fast-paced, very sort of like all this techie sound, so to say, all this it sounded like dark sci-fi music, you know? And I think I was trying to do a bit more of that. Then I slowly discovered other stuff like, you know, like Congo Natty and all of this classic, like, which was another place where the drum and bass sound came from, like, you know, breakbeat jungle and ragged jungle, breakbeat hardcore and all these like genres that also gave birth to what drum and bass is. But, you know, I came from the darker side of it, and obviously I found a home in that darker sounds, like, you know, the older Freak Recordings catalog, Obscene Recordings, Current Value, all that stuff, Dylan, like all those guys that to me, I had so much respect for them still, you know. And
that was my opening into drum and bass really around that time. So it's funny you should mention Infiltrator. I've probably not thought of that name for a very long time, but that's again one of the first artists that I come across with you. Like you say, obviously Keaton on Renegade Hardware, Noise's early releases, and of course Chasing Status were doing that kind of stuff back then as well, and Zardonic. And I think most of this music I actually found it on SoulSeek. That's where I found it, because you go on a tangent and you find new things, and it's like that was the discovery period, the honeymoon period for me.
I'm gonna give you a tip here. Like, I mean, these days, honestly, if you can afford it, buy the music, because I think we should support each other, support the drum and bass economy, whatnot. So if a track is released and I can buy it, I'll get it from either Beatport or Bandcamp. Bandcamp is usually friendlier and better quality. So I usually go to Bandcamp first, so I can find the artist directly and I can give the money directly to the artist. Then I go to Beatport. If I don't find it there, I go back to SoulSeek. It's still a thing. Yeah. And a lot of my old demos that never got any releases, they're still there because I was sharing them myself. Yeah. So I found my own music by going back to SoulSeek.
Yeah.
There's even an app for Android. I'll tell you which one it is. You'd be surprised. You'll probably feel like, you know, like it's 20 years ago and you're still discovering music. At least for the music that you cannot find anymore. I don't think that's
it was the
problem.
Key for me to discover music. There was no other way back then really to actually do it in those early noughties. I mean, just touching on like your album as well. I mean, this was way ahead of its time. I mean, you put out a digitally only album in a time where digital was just about coming. I mean, there was no Beatport then or anything like that. It was very hard to actually make any money at that time. I mean, I'd around that time, I'd just started my first record label and I was putting out vinyl. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't until the late noughties the digital really started to kind of get somewhere a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that must have been hard for, you know, to actually get the music heard. I mean, what made you go down that route and not think about, okay, well, let's invest that a little bit more into maybe vinyl? What made you go down a digital route when it was literally non-existent at the time?
I was 20 years old, living with my parents and going to college. Where am I going to get the money to invest in it? I had no other choice. But I still wanted to put it out there. That was pretty much it. I wanted people to hear my music, and I was as loud and as bold as I could about it, and as obnoxious as I could be about it. And maybe it was the wrong way to approach it, but you know, when you're still trying to prove yourself, I guess you need to make a little bit of noise. Yeah, I mean, eventually the goal was to get a vinyl. That was the thing. And these days it's actually the other way around. It's funny because how you mentioned that, like those days, I don't think we sold a single MP3 from that album. I think these days, if you find it on SoulSeek. Yeah. If you find it, maybe if it's interesting for you to give it a listen. But like I said, it's nothing I'm really proud of. It's part of my way, but I think the first track that I think was something that I'm proud of, that actually even that's how I met the DJ producer, because he bought this track. It was like he was looking for dubs and he bought the vinyl that had it. It was a track that I did called Her Lust for Blood. It's basically just Amen all the way, just raw Amen from beginning to end. And I love that. I think it was the first track that I feel, had some sense to it, so to say. It was a more consolidated sound. And then after that, what else? 2007 wasn't really a lot going on, a couple of things here and there. But then 2008, there was Policia, which was the first track that I think got me. I wouldn't say it got international attention to the project, but at least the track got international attention. Like DJ Hyde was playing it, Andy Seaworth was playing it, and
I hammered it. In fact, it was the first track of yours I actually bought. I literally hammered that track. There was a ton of remixes on it as well, from what I remember, weren't there? There was a few different mixes of the track, I think.
No, I don't think we ever did remixes of Policia, but that's a great idea, because I want to bring that track back. I've been in touch with Messinian. I've been in touch with Messinian because we want to redo it basically from scratch, because I lost the project. And we want to redo it. We also want to give it a bit of a fresh update, so it's more current day events.
I didn't even know a lot of people back then. I didn't even know a lot of people were playing it, because it was like when I just got into drum and bass. I weren't really going to drum and bass raves. My first, before drum and bass, I was doing hardcore. So a lot of people listening to this, they know a bit of my background doing Gabba and UK hardcore. And I got dragged kicking and screaming to Renegade Hardware in London, the event. And I saw Noisia, Panacea, Keaton, who else was on? Spore. And my mind was blown.
Well, I mean, you saw the right ones, to be fair.
I saw the right ones. And I walked into that venue loving hard dance music. I walked out a drum and bass fan, because before that night, I thought drum and bass was just MCs, Dillinger, grimy. I thought that's what it was. And then realizing there was something that touched on like the harder end and the techier end, that got me into it. And like I say, Policia was kind of one of the first tracks that I discovered from your side of stuff. But what do you remember about the feedback of that track when it came out? Because like you said, it got a lot of attention. Do you think it catapulted you into the next stage? Do you think that, there was a lot of new artists discovering you then as well, reaching out maybe?
I mean, I think I was trying to collaborate with as many people as I could. Back in the Ducks and Acids days, the Grid was the great place to be. That's where I found a lot of people to collaborate with. And of course, I was trying to learn from a lot of these people that I looked up to. I found all sorts of different personalities. Some people who were nicer to me, some people not so nice. Some people who were just picking me up all the time. People who were very critical of what I was doing. some constructive criticism, some destructive criticism, straight up. And I was good because it gave me a bit of a training. Whenever somebody would challenge me, like, dude, this track sucks, I would just go back and, all right, I'm going to show you. And then I would do something better and something better. Now, of course, I have a different motivation. I'm not just trying to prove people wrong. I'm more like, now it's more, I have, let's say, more relevant motives, so to say. But yeah, back in the day, I was always looking into all these people that I learned a lot from, especially, B Complex back in the day was one of the first producers that actually that I befriended, so to say, online. Very, very supportive. And well, he's transitioned right now, so I think I should call him her. But back then, before he had transitioned, like, we were friends before that, after that. As I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, whatever choices anyone wants to do about their life, that's how they want to live. I'm interested in the human being that's inside. Yeah. And if someone's been nice to me, that's something I'm never gonna forget. I don't, whatever they choose to do, whether I'm into it or not, whether I understand it or not, whether that's like a musical taste or a way to dress, whatever. And but B Complex is someone that I remember that from the beginning was always a very supportive person, and someone that that had a sound that I liked. The music had a sound that I liked, and I was really, really happy to be able to learn from that and to be able to improve my productions because of all these people that I was looking up to. Some other people, of course, were not very responsive. Some other people maybe they were tougher nuts to crack.
Yeah.
Namely, I really wanted to be signed to, I don't know, to like Human Imprint. Diesel Boy would not pay any attention.
I did have some. You did that.
It took me years of like pestering Damien, but I got there. And he's just a really busy person in general. But I love the guy. That's another person that really supported me back then. But before I
music
got there,
as well, some great music from that artist. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's but slowly, I guess, as I started befriending more people, I started collaborating with more people because as what's his face, Concord Dawn.
Yeah.
I remember having a talk with I forgot who it was from Concord Dawn. I don't know if it was before or after they split. But I remember hearing something that I never forgot, because I think it's something that a lot of people should remember as well, and it applies to this day. Respect is not to be expected, it is to be earned. And I was like, yeah, I have to work harder. It's that simple. I'm not going to get a pat in the back or a free pass just because I tried. I have to work harder, period. It has to be better. And I kept just doing that, and I think that's something that's also lost a little bit these days.
Yeah,
everyone wants to win. Everyone wants
the social media era, isn't it? It's almost like there's an expectation.
Yeah,
I mean, we get DMs. Like, we run an event in Birmingham in the UK called Raw. We get DMs all the time in a similar nature of, you need to book me, not I'm going to turn up to the event and kind of earn that booking and get to know you guys because nobody's heard of me. It's like, oh, you need to book me. Here's a little 2-second message I'm sending on Facebook to actually get it. So yeah, it's a very different kind of the kids today kind of think of it a lot different, don't they? They don't realize the graph that goes behind it, because I guess it's not presented to them in that way as well, is it? It doesn't look like you need to do that nowadays, but that's what's going to get you much further. But I mean, talking about the graft, you talk about Human Imprint. Back then, around that time, you were on the who's who of labels when it comes to dark drum and bass. Just a little list of them here, and these were some of my favorites: Mindsaw, Assimilate, Melting Pot, Symbolism, Future Sickness, and of course, big up to Diesel Boy with the Human Imprint. You were on all the best labels that I loved back then. Some of them quite big American labels as well, and you don't think of America as being at the forefront of any dance music sound, really. Do you know what I mean? It generally is the UK. So there's a lot of graft from your end. And Zardonic Recordings, that was obviously your own imprint as well. What happened with that label? Because out of all of those, obviously this was your own your own baby, and it seems as though after a certain amount of time you stopped releasing under that banner, didn't you?
Well, I just got disappointed with all the marketing that was behind it, really, which I'm sorry to say, I love a lot of those guys still to this day, but I hated the whole there's no money in it mindset. Why? If you keep having that mindset, then that's exactly what you're going to get. And you're going to stay underground and proud, and you're going to sell 10 copies, 20 copies, maybe 100, maybe 500. No, man. Like, I wanted people to go all out. I hate that. That's one thing that I never liked about the underground aspect of it. A lot of people love that. They relish that, you know, sort of exclusivity aspect of it. Like, oh, this music is not something that is understood by the masses. It's just for the real people. I hate that. I want to be on a main stage in Coachella playing the music that I play. I don't want to have to change my music to become popular. And that's something that I always hated about the nature of underground labels. I love the music, but I was like, how do we get, you know, the most amount of people to listen to it? How do we pull people in? How do we reel people in? How do we create something like a concept that becomes interesting? How do we place it like elsewhere? But there was something, I was very impatient as well. And my music still needed to evolve. Like it wasn't, you know, as every kid these days, I also had a bit of self-entitlement myself. Like, was like, yeah, well, this has to be there. You need to do this, and you need to do that, and you need to book me. We've all been there. I think that this happens to everyone that's like sort of starting off. We're so desperate to prove ourselves that sometimes we lose the plot, really. But this is something that really frustrated me, and I know that it's not like, oh, it's because the labels are doing it wrong or what. No, I know it's a difficult task. That gave birth to this guy right here. I realized this music is just not gonna take off on its own. It needs something that pulls the attention. So I'm gonna create a gimmick. And I did. And of course, I get all this hate from all these underground people who are like, oh, that's just a gimmick. That's too, like, this guy's selling out. I don't care, bro. I'm running a business here, and I want to be able to run that business doing the music that I love. Yeah. And sometimes that's not to say that I love every track that I do. Sometimes I also have to do music when I don't feel like it. You know, when it becomes a business, you have to also learn how to do that, how to write without inspiration. How to stop depending on inspiration. And yeah, it kind of sucks sometimes, but hey, you know, at the end of the day, some of these tracks can actually surprise you. I've done tracks that I just hated. It was like, oh God, this is such a chore, and I do it in like 4 hours and whatever. Yeah, take your track, give me my money. And then I look back and I look at the numbers and I'm like, holy shit, this just took off. Yeah, you know, so you never really know. Sometimes like the simpler things are the ones that take off the most. So you have to train your brain a little bit to resist that whole like wait for inspiration thing, like, because sometimes you can be really inspired and you do something beautiful like a 12-minute track that just nobody's going to care about. And it's sad to see it like that. I would still like to, you know, to know that people would open a vinyl and put it in the turntable and play it and listen to a full album like back in the day. But it just doesn't happen anymore. So we have to be able to, I think, you know, be able to create music that can be consumed and create music that we can also be satisfied with. Find some middle ground there, I think.
Talking about the gimmick and obviously the mask and how that took off. I mean, for most of that, I definitely agree. I mean, one of the things is there are so many talented DJs and producers, and if you're doing that, you are throwing yourself into a river full of these, aren't you? There's hundreds of thousands of people you've got to compete with, and it almost does seem to a fact that if you can stand above the rest, not losing any talent, of course, but standing with obviously something like the gimmick. I mean, for example, something I started in 2010 when I first, like I say, I was 5 years into DJing drum and bass. I'd had a successful hardcore career, and in drum and bass, I was just fucking getting nowhere because there were so many of me around. There were so many of me. But as soon as I thought, okay, I'm going to be a DJ versus beatboxer show, and I brought a beatboxer in, I brought a drummer in, and suddenly I was touring the world. I was traveling all around the world to countries because I had something that extra to give. I mean, do you feel with a gimmick, do you think there's a line you shouldn't cross? Do you think there's something you should be doing to kind of keep that authenticity? Or do you think that people should just go out and just try and find something different no matter what it is?
I mean, I think if you're just, you know, who was it that said it? I think it was Beyonce. I saw this phrase somewhere, and I think it was like credited to Beyonce. Everyone's trying to be different, so I'm going to do the same. You know, I mean, at some point, if you're just trying to be different for the hell of being different, and if it has no meaning to you, if there's no story behind it, if you have no real connection to it, nah,
it's going to feel good.
I don't wear this mask just because it is a gimmick. I purposely created this. Like there was a vision in it. Like it's not like, oh, I need something to bring some attention. I knew it was going to bring some attention, but I knew it was going to be good for marketing. But there was still an intention behind it. I think that's the key word, which also applies to, you know, going back to the whole like getting music licensed and games and stuff. When you do everything with intention, people tell. That's the thing. It happens everywhere. It happens in every kind of business. You know, it applies to art, applies to everyday life. If you do something with intention, people can tell, and people, I think, gravitate towards that. That's not just. I mean, of course, yes. There's no shortage of how to say. Empty musical calories, so to say. Like there's a lot of ear candy out there that doesn't really mean anything. Sometimes maybe you need to use a little bit of that to your advantage. The same way, for example, Marilyn Manson did it. I think Marilyn Manson did it in a genius way because he took it and he was sort of like making a joke around it, while still having such a powerful message.
Well, let me give you an example as well. So if we take two dance music artists, so let's take Deadmau5, for example. Now, this gimmick, and this, I mean, amazing producer, but the gimmick is quite well respected. What he's done is he's taken the idea and it's transformed into all these things where the light show is involved with his hat and his helmet. And oh my God, I mean, it's one of the most amazing ideas in dance music ever. It's brilliant. But then you compare that to, let's look at the artist Marshmello. Now, there is a lot of hate for Marshmello and what it is. It almost looks like a manufactured Kellogg's cornflakes style thing, but behind that mask is an absolutely exceptional producer as well. So with these differences, I mean, what do you see with those? Where do you see that maybe Marshmello's going wrong, but Deadmau5 is going right?
I don't think either is going right or wrong, really. I just think people are going to talk no matter what. I'm pretty sure, like, Deadmau5 is no stranger to hate.
I'm just blaming it on like the reverence you see online. You see a lot of hate for Marshmello, but not really for Deadmau5. I mean, they both get hate and they both get praise, but in those amounts, it's almost like that one's unrespected and that one isn't. That's just how it seems when you look at it.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of like the same way bullying works in school. You know what I'm saying? You don't really know why a specific person is being bullied. There's I mean, maybe you can think of some reasons, but at the same time, it's just, man, people always need someone to bully. Sadly, it's very sad that this is the way it is. And there's just, you know, they find something and they take all their anger against it. You know, imagine, I mean, I personally also, like, my first reaction was like, what is this marshmallow? It's like candy. I wasn't a big fan of the name. I wasn't a big fan of the mask. It just didn't relate to it. But you know what? I find it completely valid that there's a project out there that's trying to make the world a kinder and better place. I think that's valid. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that was the thing. I think, you know, I don't know, people will think, oh, that's gay or whatever. Like it was, you know, something wrong. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially since dance music attracts a lot of men, as you mentioned, you know, there's just not enough maybe testosterone there.
Yeah.
But sometimes maybe we don't need that all the time. Maybe sometimes we need some Deadmau5s, we need some Marshmallows, we need some Cannibal Corpses, we need some Lady Gagas, we need a bit of everything. You know, it
all invokes a reaction, doesn't it? And I guess that's where it's all going, isn't it? At the end of the day, I mean, like I said, for the long and the short of it, behind the mask, Marshmello is I don't really like his music, but I can tell he's an amazing producer. Do you know what I mean? I can tell what he does. I can hear what he does. And yeah, it's almost like one of those artists you wish you had, maybe creating the music that you love as well. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know how far that mask thing would actually get with the happiness, like you said, around it. in drum and bass, because for the most of it, it does have that kind of crowd, doesn't it, that would probably not attach themselves to that in a way, I suppose.
I don't think drum and bass is generally friendly to masks anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny. Like there was I think Matrix did a tweet that said something like, it's really interesting that EDM seems to have a lot of masks, but that never really happened in drum and bass. I wonder why. And then someone replies to him and mentions me and says, DJ Zardonic would like your address.
I've got a better caption for that. Hold my drink, and then just a picture of you there. There you go. Hold my beer. That's the caption I was looking for. Hold my beer.
Something like that. But I was really happy to see that because when somebody says that, it's like, hey, if you want to look at a mask wearing artist in drum and bass, like that's the guy. I'm like, yeah, I did it before it was cool.
There's a lot of them in Gabba as well, isn't there? Like the Satanist and things like that. There's a lot of mask wearers in Gabba and Speak, or just on the harder end of it, and maybe down towards the crossbreed stuff as well. So you're gonna find them, I think, in every style. But yeah, very different ends of the spectrum there, isn't it? Satanist in obviously Slipknot as well. There's a big one, obviously, for the rock, the mass, obviously. So it is loved in certain circumstances. But yeah, like you said, it might be the testosterone thing that we're talking about as well when it comes to
I think it just comes with when I see this, especially here's the deal. I cannot sell something I wouldn't buy. I don't go to raves. I don't go to raves to see DJs. It's the most boring thing for me. I'll just see how good that DJ set is. Unless it's like something that has really inspired me or like maybe marked an era for me. I'm like, whatever. It's just not. I know that I'm shooting myself in the foot here because I'm a DJ. I'm aware, but it's just not something to me. It's almost like, working in gastronomy and then having someone invite you to have dinner in a restaurant. You're not gonna enjoy it. You're just going to always look at all the details on how this has maybe too much or too little salt or whatever the hell, So to me, it's actually hard to enjoy going to a rave anymore because this is a job for me. And actually, also after having permanent tinnitus and going at it too long, I'm just like, the best music I can listen to right now is just silence. And I'm so happy when I'm just working in silence at home, or working maybe with sounds with something that's not. I don't even play music that loud anymore.
No.
So in that aspect, it's something difficult for me. So I'm not able to see something unless I feel I am paying for a show. And I realize that I'm not putting together like a huge show anyway, because it's just a one-man show. But I figured at least have something that people can look at and they can get a reaction from them. You know what I'm saying? And that to me is one of the bigger reasons why I'm wearing the mask as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to give people that.
You are one of the most, I mean, if you look at it solely towards drum and bass, you are up there as one of the most toured artists in the drum and bass scene, really. And well, that's obviously really good stuff. But looking at a tour schedule like that, I mean, you talk about tonight, and obviously that is going to be something that's caused that. Obviously, having heavy tour schedules for years and years and years, it's going to obviously build up towards wear and tear of obviously the human functions like your ears that you need very well. What would you say, in terms of looking after yourself then when you're touring, what have you learned are the big do's and the big don'ts when you're obviously having a tour schedule like yours?
The first thing you need to, the mindset you need to get out of is that it's a party. I think, I mean, to each their own, of course, there's going to be people out there who are going to probably flame me for saying this. But, I definitely think it's a much better idea to stay off the drugs. I mean, I'm not an angel. I'm not a saint. I wasn't like, a lot of my friends had more experience with drugs than I ever did, because I was just never my thing. But of course, like I discovered some of them, and I realized that I was having, I don't know, the worst time of my life. Like it wasn't helping the music. It wasn't helping maybe some of the more introspective drugs, I would say, but in very, very small amounts. And I still think this is something that has to be studied further. Like I've had in my life 2 LSD trips, and they were very very mild because I was very calculated about it. I wasn't trying to party on LSD. I don't think that's something I would recommend to anybody because a lot of people can go to the other side and not come back from that. I remember one time it was during a hard techno party and I just felt horrible. But the first time it was in the mountains, you know, next to nature. Like I had a proper sort of say, how do you say this?
A moment. A moment.
Yeah, a moment, I guess. I mean, I'm losing the word that I'm trying to find here, but it was a ritual. That's the word I'm looking for. It was a ritual to me. And it was very enlightening ritual as well. But I think, you know, when it comes to, you know, just getting like coked up all the way, like out of control or drinking too much, like even if you can take it, even if you're having fun, at some point, you know, your body is going to fail. Your body's going to tell you, you can't keep doing this. And you're just going to have an early end to your career. You see it in a lot of DJs. Like, I actually feel so sorry about it because like this is such great people, such like lovely people, and you see them these days like having all sorts of health problems. You know, if you don't take care of your wellness now, you're going to take care of your illness later. So, I think that's a big one. Like proper sleep, proper nutrition, proper like. I'm also not the best at following any of this advice. But at least, you know, when I go to a party, I'm not like, you know, waiting to get high or whatever. I don't coke all the way up through my tours. It's more like, you know, I'm just trying to play a show. I stay in my hotel. I rest. I go to the show. I play my set. I'm out. I'm not gonna expose my ears to that kind of noise the whole night. I'm done with it. Yeah. Maybe I'll talk to some people. I'll stay backstage if I feel like a good vibe. And you know, maybe I'll have a little bit of rum. Why not? Like get good from like a small drink, a beer or two. Once in like an eternity, I'll be like, okay, I want to get smashed tonight. I haven't done this in a while, and then I remember why I shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? But usually, to me, those are the big don'ts.
It's tough though, isn't it? I mean, we are. As DJs and performers and artists, you are in an atmosphere of, as obviously people letting loose, and you know, you're surrounded by thousands of people where 80%, 90% of those people are going to be off their nut on some kind of substance. Alcohol's involved, and generally, obviously, that's going to lose a few inhibitions, which obviously leads to drugs. So, I mean, it is tough to take that mindset and to resist it if you're not a teetotal person, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And being around that, I mean, one thing I found that was a big thing for me to kind of calm down on the partying is I started driving to gigs myself. So as soon as I was able to kind of drive to gigs and things like that, it stopped me from obviously getting on it, getting smashed, getting drink, you know, remember I've got to go to the hotel, you know, I've got to drive back and things like that. And I think when you have those responsibilities, it was probably the only thing that kind of pulled me out of it. I've never been somebody who's gone on a massive binge for months and months, but yeah, you know, I'd be backstage and, you know, you're going to start getting on the spirits and things like that and partying with people quite a lot. Very tough to do, isn't it? Do you find that the kind of partying and the crowds were very different from drum and bass and metal? Do you find one easier to kind of keep to that regiment or anything like that?
I think there's definitely less drugs in the metal scene. There's a lot of weed, but you know, depending on where you think that, you know, whether weed is a drug or not, that's a matter of. It definitely is a drug, and I am one of the people that you know, they say there's like a smaller percentage of people that just go on like a black hole and a bad trip every time they smoke weed. I'm one of those. I never had fun. I've been waiting for this, like, you know, great vibes and fun times that everyone was having, and I was like, why am I just there? Like, I fucking hated it. I hate weed. I just can't deal with it. Sometimes it's just too much.
It's not a rave drug, is it? It's not a part. I mean, I don't smoke weed. I have tried weed myself, but I've never got it. I don't get it personally. I can't relax on it. Just makes me wondering what's going on and things like that. Puts me on edge a little bit. And that doesn't seem like something I'd want to be doing when I'm trying to enjoy myself and talk to people. You know what I mean? So I'm the same with that as well.
I think alcohol is just the best possible drug, really, for whether of course, everything in moderation.
Yeah.
But it just really it feels right. You're going to a metal concert, you're having fun with people, you have a beer, 2, maybe 3, and then you're like a little tipsy, and that's about enough.
I'm really surprised at that, though. I mean, I've seen plenty of rock and metal documentaries with bands, and it does sound like usually quite the opposite. I guess this is in the old days, though, I suppose, isn't it? So,
that's the whole sex,
big
drugs,
buckets
and rock
of
and
coke and strippers backstage and just bags and bags of cocaine. That's the kind of thing that you guess that you'd be seeing at a rock concert or something like that.
I'm assuming that at some point, like, that's what rock and roll was about. And then, look at how all these Motley Crue guys are looking like, and then tell yourself if you really want to have that kind of future. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think these days there's also, like, at least in metal concerts, you know what I'm saying? Because I do think there's a bit of a distinction. It's all comes from the same thing. You don't see people at a Sepultura concert because I remember, I think it was one of the last concerts that I went to where I was backstage, because I'm friends with the guys from Crowbar, and after this they introduced me to the guys from Sepultura, and because another friend of mine has a band where the bassist of Sepultura is playing in, and they were all trying to connect me and stuff, and it was great. It was a great connection. Dude, there was no drugs backstage. Just none.
You talked about acceptance, obviously, in drum and bass, and some people kind of veer away from the mask thing. That's something that's obviously a non-accepted thing. When you get those rare occasions, it happens. Do you have anything like that on the rock and metal side of it as well, when you're doing more of those gigs and festivals? Is there anything that holds people back? Well, I'm not going to watch Zardonic for that reason. What would it be?
I'm just a button pusher. You know what I mean? I get it. I mean, they're right. I don't care. I just don't care, because I'm not trying to go about my life. I don't measure the happiness of my life with everyone's opinion of me. Everyone's gonna have an opinion. I'll go insane if I try to make everyone happy. Of course, I try to care about some of my fans, but even so, like, I'm also not afraid to tell people off if they're overstepping, because a lot of people also get a lot of entitlement, from being your fan. They have these expectations. I've had people even show up in some of my socials and just telling me what to do, and like that, and you should do this, and you have to do that, and you have to do that. I had this really big beef with this guy at some point, because he was commenting on every single post, and even creeping into my personal life. He was even writing a girlfriend of mine back in the day, saying something I don't know, he wanted to do a Zardonic mask for himself, and then he did it, and then he didn't want it, and he was asking her if she wanted to buy it, whatever, all sorts of mental stuff. And I'm like, dude, fuck off, all right? Back the fuck off. What's wrong with you? This is not. You're not entitled to any of this shit. Why are you talking to my girlfriend?
Yeah. So again, it's one of those internet walls there. You think you're superhuman and you can do anything, isn't it? When your keyboard's in front of you, so to speak.
Or people also following my mom and trying to talk to her.
I've had that.
My mom.
I've had that as well. I've had that as well. That
I hate it.
So much.
I'm super protective of my family. Some people understand it and see it the right way. Other people don't. I actually had issues with said girlfriend, because I didn't want anybody to know anything about her online. Not because I was trying to, not because I was ashamed of her, or because I didn't want people to know. I just don't want people to fucking mess with my girlfriend. That's my personal life. That's where I get out of this whole,
it's protection, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't want to put too much of that out there, because again, there's a lot of fans, and a lot of them can overstep that mark, can't they? From the artist to the personal side of it, and you don't know who's doing that, do you? So you've got to protect it. You don't know who's going to do it.
Yeah.
With the metal and rock festivals, and then drum and bass ones, would you say you play the same kind of set at both of these, or do you alter them to suit? Like at the rock and metal, do you maybe chuck a few more actual metal tracks in there and things, or do you just full on it Zardonic on both of them?
I mean, I try to, let's say, some of the more extreme remixes that just never worked in a drum and bass dance floor. Those are the ones that I play at the more metal festivals. I don't know, This remix I did back in the day. I haven't played that in a long time, but for example, this remix I did back in the day for Gorgoroth, which is like bands like those. You don't remix bands like those. Period. I was just crazy enough to want it to try. But you don't play that. It's just not a rave vibe. It's not a let it roll vibe. That's a vibe that fits more with a metal audience. It's more like headbanging audience. They're more into like this really intense sort of like dark feel. But my live sets, as much as there are some dark moments to them, like if you probably notice in my more recent sets, they're a bit more. I would say they have a bit more positive energy in a way. Also, maybe because I as a person, I'm also evolving. I don't feel that angry anymore, man. I don't know. I'm getting older. I'm losing the testosterone.
Yeah. It does happen. It happens to the best of us. It does.
Yeah. So I'm just here. I just want to make people happy. I want people to dance and bounce. And I'm gonna play something. And then, of course, in the middle of that, I still make space for what I consider to be great music. Like there's still, I try to build a journey in my sets. I try to build a story in my sets. Very influenced by what Diesel Boy was doing back in the day. That's why, to me, he is the greatest drum and bass DJ of all time, in my ears, at least. That's not to say that there's no. I mean, every good DJ is a good DJ, but the way he approached it to me was very influential, and I tried to use that. I tried to take people on a journey. I'm like, this drop is gonna work well next to this other drop. I'm not trying to triple drop all the time just to show off that I can push so many buttons. I hate that. To me, that's like watching one of these like guitar gods and virtuosos, where like playing like 10-minute solos. Boring. I can't deal. I respect the skillsmanship, but I just can't. It's not something I can get behind. I don't know why. It's but yeah. I think the metal crowd, they do want to see a bit more of live instruments, so maybe I should think about putting together a live band for that. It's something I've been thinking about for a long time, but just hasn't happened.
I'm surprised you haven't, to be fair. I would have definitely guessed you'd maybe have some of your live shows for the tracks as well. So there you go.
Well, I mean, producing a live show for a band, something that looks like really good, it's much easier just to take this mask and a USB stick, put it on gear that the club provides. If the club provides the good visuals, or you can give them visuals and you already have an LED screen, that's it, man. It makes it a lot easier. I mean, for me to have a live band, I've heard some horror stories, man, from like drum and bass bands, like the Chemists, for example. I mean, I don't want to give too much details because that's on them. It's not my business to speak about their business, but of course, working together with them, we became friends and we talked about a lot about some of this personal stuff, like the amount of money they would get paid versus the amount of money each of them would take home. I'm like, no fucking way. It's just not. If I don't see if I don't see profit in it, there's no point.
Well, a proper live show, it's not just the members of who's performing there, is it? You've got the crew, you've got the setup. Because you're doing a live show, you probably have your own video setup and things like that as well, and lights. It's a whole different ball game, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, that's it. But who knows? I mean, maybe when the time is right, maybe why the hell not? I would love to do it, but it has to be something. The prices would have to be very steep. Yeah. I don't think it warrants those prices right now. I would have to be losing money. And I think a lot of bands do that. Like, they go on stage to prove themselves and they lose a lot of money doing these tours because they had to prove themselves. I refuse to do that.
Well, you've got to spend all the time converting the digital music into what's live and what's being played as well, isn't there? So there's going to be a lot to go behind. But yeah, I'm sure that would be an amazing show if it came to light. It definitely would.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Superstars. Obviously, one of the most current things that you're doing at the album. I mean, this album, it looks like a lot of work. There's tons of collaborations from the likes of rock vocalists like Cole Sentence. We've also got Shining, Mechanical Vein, and you've also got DNB producer Toronto is Broken, who we spoke about, actually, who lives up the road from me. And a camo MC as well, UK drum and bass MC. So there's a lot of variety in this album. How long did it take for you to put it together? You're dealing with a lot of outside artists' involvement here.
I mean, that was the thing. As I kept getting requests from the video game industry and remix requests and mix and master jobs, ironically, I started having less and less time to work on my own music. So I was delaying this album for a while already. Like, it was like, because I wanted to sit down and put something together, like Anti-Hero. Maybe Anti-Hero took me a bit more. It was all more thought out. And then I was like, okay, if I am just not able to sit down and think about like what kind of music I want to write, I need help. So this was my way of delegating, except I don't hide behind, how to say, well, we were talking about it, about like having ghost producers. Like any other guy out there would just do the tracks and then just say he did it himself. I don't do that. So if I am collaborating with somebody, if somebody else is working on a track where I'm working on, the credits have to be there, all of them, period. So that's what I did, really. And in some cases, I would write the music and then I would send it over to get some vocals on top. Maybe in other cases, I would get maybe like a demo idea from somebody else. Like, do you have an idea? And they would have like a couple of cool things. And from there, I would build a track and then I would send it back and so on and so forth. Sometimes I would just write small snippets and somebody else would work more and so on and so forth. It's a very 50-50 in a way. Some tracks I worked 95% of it. Some tracks I worked only like 20% of them. Such as the case with the collaboration with Toronto's Broken. I mean, that was pretty much an old demo that he did, and I turned that into a song. I gave it the structure, I gave it a mix. So it was more like in terms of like using the right structure, doing the right mix for it, and finding a vocalist for it. And then I went to the guys from Dedrick, and Chris from Dedrick did the vocals for that one. So I was more like delegating and directing in some of these tracks, and in other tracks I was also like taking the the front line in a way. And the reason was because I just did not have the time. I was like, okay, while you're working on those ideas, I have to finish this remix, and then I finish this remix and I send it over and I do this track for this video game. Okay, back to the record, and here's bam, and I send it again to somebody else. While you're doing those vocals, I'm gonna do this mix and master job. And so it just, I had no time. So either it was a collaboration record or it was not gonna be a record. So that's why it's called Superstars. The superstars are the collaborators.
It is. It does feel like a collaboration album for you, and you know, looking at this, it's fair to say then a lot of these people were already in touch with you then, and you just kind of collaborated on certain tracks. How did you get picked up with Monarch? I mean, they're a New York City label, I believe, aren't they? I mean, what was the relationship? I know you've got a great one with them now, but how did that relationship start?
Well, this was in 2012, I think, when they contacted me first. I was ready to 2013, I think. I was ready to go independent. I just didn't want to have anyone taking care of my music. I just wanted to release everything on my own and put it out there and just see how it will go. And then they emailed me. I had no idea who they were. Back in the day, they were called Entertainment One. As you know, Entertainment One sold the music arm of the company, and this music arm is what now is Monarch Music Group. But this used to be like E1 Films, E1 Music. This is what it was really. They absorbed all these different labels like Last Gang and I think Death Row as well. And then they sold it back to Snoop Dogg, I think. And they had who else? Well, Monarch, all of their own labels. And there was a big group of labels. Like they have anybody and everybody from Ace Frehley of Kiss to Zakk Wylde and all this, like, also really interesting modern metalcore bands and then like R&B artists and also some people that I'm not necessarily like the biggest fan of, but you know, they have a healthy variety of people. And they are very good at developing artist careers. But they just approached me, really. I think they wanted to go after the metal electronic sound. And they just stumbled upon a YouTube video, the Bring Back the Glory video, thanks to what? The mask. Because you have a thumbnail with that mask and people immediately like, what is that? It was so powerful. And then they hear the music, and of course they stay because they like it. If they don't like it, then the gimmick would only do so much for you. But it put a foot in the door for sure. And that was it, really. They just came to me.
So when they heard tracks like Bring the Ruckus, was that like an instant yes? Because they are predominantly a rock metal label. So some of this stuff was very new to them. And obviously, you know, waters they're treading in that they never have before. Did they warm to tracks like that very quickly, or did it take a bit of persuading?
Here's the thing. This is my 3rd record with them. And I was already on a 3-record deal. And as much as they have to approve it, they just trust me. And that's something that's really good about them. They trust the artist. They trust what the artist wants to do. They trust that the artist knows what people will like, what will not like. And they're also happy to take some risks. I never felt that pressure from them. Like, no, you need to write this. No, we need that. Like, I was just being myself, and whatever I would do, they just loved it. So yeah, that was pretty much it. They gave me a lot of freedom.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot on this album. There's a lot of collaborations. You've obviously got your head screwed on with all of this when it comes to getting the collaborations there and bringing something new. I mean, there's even a Blue Monday cover on the album as well. So it fits for everyone. And I cannot stress this enough for everybody to go out and check this album out. Superstars. It's available now on all platforms out there. Zardonic as well. Check his old stuff, because this is what got me into his music originally as well. But yeah, Frederica, thank you very much for your time with this. It's been a great time, it's been a great time learning about your history and obviously reminiscing for myself on some of the music as well. So it's been great.
Thank you so much for having me, man. And yeah, I mean, if anything, I'm sorry I can't keep talking, because I'm pretty sure we can always go for hours talking about 1,000 things. But, I guess this is a good amount of time and information for an interview. But, anytime you want to do this again, just let me know. I will always be here for you at your, at your call and
yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
We'll definitely do something again. We'll look towards the next project, see what's coming next as well. But have you got a few plugs that you want to put out there? We're obviously Plug Superstars. Anything else going on you want to let people know about?
Some things I am not supposed to be talking about yet, but I mean, sorry. There's already a new remix that I did that came out last Friday. It's a remix I did together with Pythius of Cell Dweller's seminal track Shapeshifter, the one that was on Need for Speed.
Yeah. Blackout released that, isn't it?
I love that. This wasn't Fix Music. I love how that remix came out. Like I'm super, super proud of it. And also, like, of course, like, freaking Pythius is a master of freezes. So, that was an easy one. And I think this is a great release as well. I think people should go check it out, and also stay tuned for more collaborations, more remixes coming up. There's another one that I just did for Blue Stallion and DJ Hyper. There's gonna be more for some of the other bands that I've been doing remixes for before. I'm doing more of that. There's a remix for Noisia that I'm working on. I know. That's the thing. I'm not sure if I should be talking about it, because the way they work is they only release what they like.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna have to like it. Come on. But I'm actually gonna work my ass off to make sure that this is like something really out there. I want this to be very epic. I want it to be a tribute to what I believe is the greatest drum and bass act of all time, the greatest drum and bass producers of all time, and celebrating their legacy, and very sad and confused about such a terrible business decision of quitting. What the hell?
Amazing.
But fair enough, if they, that's their choice. I respect them of course, as people and as human beings first and foremost. And I'm glad that they're now giving people all these opportunities. So,
well, it's a mic drop moment at the peak of their career, isn't it? It's like, there we go, all done. But yeah, listen,
it's a good way. It's a good way to go. I guess.
Oh, you lost
Sorry, that's gonna be there for sure. And I'm hoping they will like it. I'll work my ass off so they like it, but I'm not gonna say which track yet. But it's gonna be interesting.
I'll be in touch. I need to hear this. I need to hear it. So I'll be in touch. I'm very impressed already by the sounds of you and Noisia collaborating. But listen, I know you pushed for time. Thank you so much for taking this with us today. It's been amazing. As I said, don't forget to go and buy and stream Superstars. That's the end of this episode. Catch you very soon for another one. Cheers. What's up, everyone? Lee UHF here, the host of DNB Raps. Thank you for watching our videos. If you like what you're hearing and seeing on the channel, please make sure you're subscribing to it. Please make sure you thumbs up the videos. And more importantly, let's get some comments going as well. It really helps the channel, and in order for us to provide this content to you, we do need the channel to grow. So we can't do this without your help. Hope you enjoy the video. Speak to you soon.